Welcome to Season 2 of Frontline Fridays, brought to you by Ubik, the AI-powered platform that helps retail and hospitality leaders connect, train, and empower their teams. I'm Ron Thurston, and this season, we're exploring what it really takes to lead on the front lines of retail and hospitality. Together, we'll dive into the biggest shifts shaping frontline work and how bold leaders are navigating them to drive results where it matters most. Each episode, you'll hear from executives, industry experts, and powerhouse operators who share honest lessons, practical insights, and the tactics that are redefining what great leadership looks like. My guest today is Steve Worthy, Head of Growth for North America at Competitor IQ, founder and CEO of Worthy Retail Global, and host of the long-running podcast, Retail Leadership with Steve Worthy. Steve has led retail operations for some of the world's most recognized brands, including Target, Walmart, Barnes & Noble, Dollar General, and Caribou Coffee, overseeing billions in revenue and thousands of frontline associates. Steve recently released the 2025 Retail Leadership Development Study, a landmark global report based on more than 600 surveys from frontline and field leaders across every major retail category. It's one of the most comprehensive looks we've seen into what store and district leaders truly need today. And the findings paint a striking picture. Leaders aren't overwhelmed by tasks. They're overwhelmed by isolation. They want coaching, clarity, and a culture where it's safe to lead without pretending to have all the answers. Today, we're going to unpack those insights, the truth behind the data, and talk about what they mean for your leadership, your team, and the future of this industry. Steve Worthy, welcome to Frontline Fridays.
I have been looking forward to this all week. I'm excited, man.
Me too. And I think this is long overdue. We have a very specific topic that we're going to cover, but you and I have been friends for several years now. We call each other a brother from another mother idea because not only do we have similar characteristics of shaved heads and beards, but we have a love of this business that is unlike many other people that I know. You are someone who is incredibly committed to the front line, who lives and breathes these conversations. And when I think about Frontline Fridays and why we're here, why we spend time and energy having these conversations, it's because of people. And so I'm very honored to have you here. I've been on your show. You're going to do this one, because there aren't enough, I believe, voices who spend time celebrating and recognizing the hard work of the front line in hospitality, retail, and all the service businesses. So I'm really happy. All right. Let's get started. So one of the things that I wanted to make sure we dug into was a survey that you've done this year. I understand you're going to do it again next year because this is an important time where we don't just have opinions about what we think about the front line. We actually have data and insights that you've done across thousands of touch points and hundreds of people. And so set the stage for the survey, and then I want to dig into your finding.
Yeah, it's interesting. I wanted to do this a while back, actually, when I was in grad school, but I was sort of just growing my career, and I didn't really think that I had the cachet or the ammunition, if you will, to even like attempt to do something like this. And then when I started Worthy Retail and left the corporate retail and started doing my own business, the idea came up again. And because you know as well as I do, you hear from leaders all the time, right? In our business, we hear from people that we coach and we train and develop, and we hear all these different things. And then as my network started to grow outside of the States, whether it's over in Dubai or London, what I started to hear was rumblings very similar to what we were hearing in North America around leadership development, maybe the lack thereof. And so I said, well, let's just put something to this. Let's actually create a study. Let's actually think about some different questions, some ideas that we want to present. I actually had a couple of really good friends, Gotham, who and also Matt Mueller. We got together and I sent them all some questions and we came up with what we have right now for the study. But what we wanted to make sure that we did with the study wasn't just to provide the data. We wanted to provide the story and the ideas at it. So we were able to get over 621 different leaders from North America, South America, Europe, Dubai, China, Africa, all over the globe to actually partake, be respondents in this. And what we heard was just a lot of the similar things that we hear in the States around lack of development, different ideas that they want to express, but they don't have the avenue to do it. And so that study just revealed an entirely new world of retail leader concerns that we've been able to address and actually provide to the retail industry.
Incredible. Because often what I find is, our perceptions of Frontline are based often on the brands that we've worked for. And I've tried really hard. You come from big box Target early in your career. I didn't have that big box experience. So I've tried to dig deeper when it comes to people like you to really understand, because big box experiences are different than luxury, smaller format, or in different cities and different countries. And I think often we paint very global, generic pictures about what the front line is. And it's very different by brand, by state, by district, by formats, all of it. And so I appreciate that you went all over the world. A couple highlights, the biggest ideas, the biggest takeaways, and what surprised you most?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest takeaways was around, leaders having the ability around understanding their role. So when we presented the findings in London earlier this year at a conference, I had a room full of retailers, which was awesome to be able to present our findings. And one of the areas that I wanted them to take away, and probably also for your audience, was that the leaders that we surveyed, they were not looking for more training around routine, right? And so I think that's an important element to discuss. And what one of our key findings was around, we don't need routine. Listen to me. We know how to do our routine. We understand the day ins and the day outs and what's sort of what we're required to do. What we want is sort of the deeper understandings of leadership and ideas that sometimes are only selected for, whether it's the senior vice president or the suites or the C-suite. Different things like emotional intelligence and self-awareness, all those different ideas that we talk about in a lot of these leadership books. A lot of these leaders were looking for that because they are dealing with different caliber of leaders, whether it's the leaders that are taking 2 or 3 buses to work and they're still coming in on a daily basis and they're struggling with finances. They're dealing with a different brand of leader every day, and so that requires them to be different. It requires them to have a better understanding of the leaders around them. And you can't do that by just focusing in on better routines. And so that was sort of the messaging, that sort of the through line of everything. And that was what we presented, as sort of the takeaway when we presented this in London.
And what did those retailers respond with?
Yeah, it was interesting.
Surprise or not?
Yeah, I saw, I always look for facial responses, right? When you're giving a presentation as much as you possibly can. And then of course it's afterwards, you get people coming up to you, talking to you. I think they were surprised in the idea around routines, because a lot of the corporate training that we see, of course, is based on structure. It's based on daily opportunities, task lists, all these different things that they have to deal with, right? I think what they were surprised was the depth that the respondents spoke about, right? The comments were amazing. We had, I don't know how many different comments. We had over 500 or 600 comments that we were able to draw information from and conclusions from. And part of that was, hey, we don't need just this everyday training. We need something more depth. But the other part, Ron, was that we don't just need training from, the corporate. You and I know this, very well, is that we can get people that are outside of the day-to-day, outside of sort of the corporate speak, and actually be able to have a conversation with us about who we are, what do we want to do, and where we want to go. Man, that takes on a completely different, perspective. I've been very, very fortunate, probably similar to you, throughout my career, where I've had mentors and coaches. And so I'm very big on coaching. And I think part of what was some of the big takeaway and the surprise with some of the retailers was around that the coaching aspect from a team standpoint, not just from a senior vice president or C-suite.
And particularly, which leads me into my question, that you've described this kind of paradox of the leadership paradox of this, like, I'm expected to know, but I'm either afraid to ask or I don't have anyone to ask. It is a leadership paradox. I love that term because as I describe things like retail being an accidental career, which always gets kind of a chuckle from people on the subtitle of Retail Pride, more importantly, it is an expectation to just know. You've been handed the keys to a multi-million-dollar business. Whether you are fully prepared for it or not, happens every day. And so there is very much a leadership paradox here. And so how did that show up in the survey, and what have retailers said to you?
Yeah, that's such a. I'm glad you brought up that point. I know you and I had a discussion about that previously too when the study first came out. You know what we found was around preparation. We found that around 18% of leaders felt prepared, for their day, right? Prepared as a leader, once again, not from a routine standpoint, but from an overall leadership prowess standpoint, if that makes sense. It's not about just the routine. It's like, I don't feel prepared to lead as broadly, maybe, and even from a depth as people think that I should because of the position that I have. Partly because I'm probably a little afraid to ask someone maybe for help because I'm supposed to know it all. But then you and I had the conversation, and you alluded to was that, well, maybe they don't know who to ask, or they don't have the right person to ask. And that's such a poignant point, is that, and we went back and looked at some of the research, was that they wanted to express new ideas. They wanted to have ideas, but once again, they didn't feel safe in actually able to do that. And so one of the areas that we speak a lot about too is not just the retail leader paradox, but also having the psychological safety. Such a almost like a buzzword now for like the last 2 years, but partly because it's important that leaders, if you're leading a team, that you are creating that psychological safety where people have the freedom to ask questions that they don't know, or to ask questions that in a very safe environment where they're not seen as a less of a leader because they don't know, they want to know more information. And you and I know the best leaders, they know what they know, but guess what? They also know what they don't know, and they're okay with that. And so we need to make sure that we're providing that culture, that environment for more and more retail leaders to express that, but then also providing them an avenue in where they can grow in their depth of leadership.
I think when I think about the future leaders, say multi-store leaders, I don't know about you, but I was very much, when I first got promoted to a district manager, I was a store manager of 10 stores. I ran the heck out of 10 stores. I wasn't learning how to be a multi-store leader. And so there is this sense of trust and letting people experience their own mistakes, their own successes, their own celebrations, their own failures as part of being a good leader. And when you hold it all too close and you demand so much and you're always in the store with a checklist, it doesn't allow for that freedom of the paradox. That's why I love this idea of, like, it's okay not to know. And in fact, I encourage you to find things and try things that you don't know or understand. That's how we grow.
Yes. Yeah. And having ideas that are outside of retail, right? I know we're talking about retail here, but I think one of the best things that a leader can have is a hobby or something that they're passionate about that's outside of retail. Because what that does, that for me, it always showed me that they have some measure of depth. They have some an identity that's not just attached to their role, but maybe attached to something else, whether it's knitting or something. I always wanted to know that a leader was doing something outside of these four walls, because I've always felt that they were more well-rounded. And I think that's also a lost part. I think we want everybody to bleed for the badge, and I get it. Listen to me, right? I love the companies that I worked for, but man, oh man, I tell you what, I wanted to make sure that I was taken care of as a whole person, because if I wasn't, I couldn't be my best self when I came to work.
It's a mindset that I think is part of this business because it's 7 days a week. It's all hours of every day. You become immersed as a frontline leader in the business because you don't have the ability often to step away. The other part of this paradox that I may be most excited about is thinking about how AI is changing that landscape, how you have access to information at your fingertips and at a speed of which we never had before. That confidence that maybe was lacking because of having no one to ask. Your tools are being developed every day now. You don't have a human, but you've got an AI tool in your pocket. And that has become the new version of coaching. And we haven't, according to your survey, been so good at doing it in an analog human way. And I'm very prepared for what we need to do in order to change that because we have to. We don't have a choice.
It's coming. And I think the survey, we had a very specific question around the impact of AI on your day-to-day. And if I could be very honest with you, I was surprised in the results where that the majority of people stated that, they didn't feel that it was going to have that big of an impact. They knew it was going to have an impact, right? But not that much of an impact. And then as we started to sift through the comments, what we realized from that question was that a lot of the people already know about AI. They're already utilizing it, right? Whether they know it or not, whether it's from Spotify, whether it's searching things on the internet, they understand the algorithm and all these AI things when they're on different shopping apps. They understand the premise of it. But what they said was missing was the with them. Like, what's in this for me? Like, that's always the biggest issue when it comes to any new initiative from a corporate standpoint is that you have to take the human ideas and the human being into consideration when you're drawing out these new initiatives. Like, what's in it for me? What we noticed was that a lot of companies were running, man. They are running with the whole AI conversation, but they're leaving their team behind. They're leaving their team behind in that conversation, but their team is already there. Team understands that it's going to impact their role. But how is it going to impact me personally? What do I need to understand? Questions do I need to ask, to have a broader context of what this is going to do for me and my team? If we do a much better job of that from a retail standpoint, I think the AI adoption is going to be a lot easier. However, what we've noticed is from some statistics, this isn't just in the retail space, was that over 85% of new AI products or projects within a corporation fail, partly because of adoption, partly because, and here's the number one issue, you're solving the wrong problem. How do you even implement something before you've even identified the correct problem? So when I talk to leaders about AI, I talk to them about problem solving first from a very analog standpoint. How are you solving problems? How are you identifying the problems? Because if you're able to do that first, it's going to make understanding the implementation of AI that much easier.
And so if we look at that and say one of the biggest problems, and I don't even say problem, it's a financial challenge, is turnover and retention, employee retention. If that is the number one cost, brands that do that analysis discover that it is, then what's the AI version according to Steve's data? What's the solution here around improving things like retention? Because I agree with you. Let's identify the problem. The problem is actually employee retention, confidence, access to tools, ability to be more efficient, ability to do more with less payroll, less people. Like, what's the problem? What creates retention, and how do we solve it? For me, that's the biggest AI challenge in retail today.
I agree. And companies that are listening to this, any company that's from a retail standpoint, I don't believe that those yearly surveys work. When you are surveying the entire company and they want to give you all these information and then you take that and then guess what? You go and you try to do all these new initiatives and things like that. I am not a firm believer in those. I don't think that they work. I don't think you're getting an honest perception of your business. I believe when you think about sort of the AI solution is that how do you, and Ron, you've actually already sort of created the solution to it with your book is how do you make sure that we don't take the human out of retail? How do we make sure that we are still involving people on the front line in the decision making process that we need? What we see from a retention standpoint is when a vision is cast and the individuals don't see themselves in the vision. If I don't see myself in the vision of where this company is going, right? Guess what? I'm going to find another company that's going to help me where I can see myself in the vision. So we've sort of lost the plot when it comes to that. We making sure that we are bringing the human along with that process and understanding their value. Do they even understand their value to the company? Because that's another aspect, another issue is how do we help them, which is, define their value. We talk a little bit about this, about retainability, right? The retainability concept that we uncovered within the study is how do you define your value within the company, not just now, but down through your career. That makes you retainable. That makes you invaluable to the company. And a lot of companies have not invested enough in the individuals to help them find out and find their real value. Hence, we start to see retention rates continue to go up.
I think everyone would agree with this. And so what's the first step a brand can take around retainability based on the data? What's the first thing they should do?
What we've seen is to get an outside perspective on their brand. I think what they tend to do is that they immediately probably get some of the department heads together and some of the area heads together. You may go to a retreat or whatever. You can do some whiteboard sessions and all of that. And all you're doing is talking across the table to the same people who are implementing the same different things. I always feel it's important that you get an outside, that you bring in somebody that can do an assessment of your team, of your culture, where it's at, and give you an honest perspective. Because if you can't start, from square one with an honest understanding of where you are, how you're treating your people, how your people feel at every level in any exercise that you do as a team, I think it's going to be, an act of futility. Partly is how do you make sure that you get an outside perspective of your team? And then once you get that information, what are you going to do with it? Because if you get the right people to bring in the ideas and the value, then you got to do something with it. That's when we talk about all the time. When we talk about feedback, we talk about it in the context of inspires trust. One of the best things that you can do to inspire trust with your team is when you receive feedback, whether it's an individual or as a company, that you got to do something with that. Because the worst thing you can do is to get something. Ron comes in with this really amazing idea of how to make sure that the team is solidified, they're trained, and you don't do anything with it. Guess what? The problem is going to remain.
That's exactly right. And that's where the annual survey, to your point, doesn't serve its purpose. Quarterly is great because you can track progress. You can see, am I addressing the challenges? Am I supporting the things that are working? You're learning and acting in real time almost, when you think about quarterly, but annual doesn't do enough of that. And what you've discovered is there are deep rooted needs for continued emotional intelligence, leadership, coaching, handling difficult challenges, maybe being a better interviewer, all of it. I agree with you 100%. It's not operations training. I get that. And AI is actually going to become an even more important avenue here in store ops, but people and coaching and the ability to inspire, you have uncovered through data the exact challenge that unlocks the future of this industry. I'm glad to see the data, but it also should wake everyone up that we know what the challenges are. What are the solutions? As you've had further conversations after this survey came out, have there been brands that have taken initiatives to change that?
Yeah, actually, that's been the exciting part, right? I think, for me, this was when I, first wanted to do it. It was like, let me just get the information out there and let me just, get the first one done. And I think I was taken aback by, the number of companies that wanted to learn more about, the data for me to present, the findings to their board and to their companies. So it was an amazing opportunity for me to express in a more raw you know that, Ron. I don't hold back, and you don't hold back. So, in a very just raw setting where you just can't care about emotional ties to initiatives that you have created because they're your baby, and it's like that the thing is dead. You need to move it forward, and so being able to have these conversations with these companies, they've taken it to heart. We've been able to bring several companies into our campus, our membership community, where we're starting with different teams, whether it's a corporate team or a field team, and we're implementing different ideas, whether it's approachability. We're also doing some individual coaching. So there are companies that are taking the next step, which is exciting to see. So hopefully next year, when the study comes out next year, we'll get even more people and more opportunity to talk to people about what needs to take within retail leadership development.
If the company's not doing it for you, as you and I would probably say to anyone that's having a coaching session, self-development is also about self-development. And it's the books, it's the podcasts, it's the mentorship, it's people outside of the org, because sitting and waiting for someone to hand you development is not a strategy for success. We've all learned this over time. And being more aggressive and saying, I need more, I want to grow, I'm committed. It may require you to do it yourself.
Yeah. Years ago, Greg Pear, if he's ever going to listen to this, years ago, he told me this, and I was just coming on board with it. He said, Steve, you have to own your training, own your development. I mean, that was probably 20 plus years ago when he told me that. And it was something that just stuck with me. And it was a saying that I would say to every new hire, right? We're going to give you something, but you have to own your training and development. You have to be honest with your gaps. You have to be honest with what you need. You have to be honest with being able to, and culturally, we have to provide that culture for you to be honest. Right? So I can't just tell you to say, own your development, own your training, and I don't create a culture in which you can say, Steve, I need more X, I need more Y, right? So it's quid pro quo, right? I have to give something in order for you to give me something. It's an important aspect of that relationship that you have to have. One area that I'll talk about real quick is that I had a young lady who left. She quit. This was years ago, and she was one of my best leaders, one of my best district managers. And I said, "Wow, why did she leave? Why did she leave?" And basically, she told me, she said, "Steve, I didn't feel that I felt like you were too busy. Felt you were too busy in order to feed into me and to give me what I needed." And Ron, here's the God honest truth of the whole situation was that I had capped out in my leadership. I had really hit a ceiling. I couldn't give her what she wanted. So what I did was that I started to bury myself in tasks and ignore the fact that I was not giving this young lady what she needed because I didn't know what I needed myself. And so we have so many leaders, I think, today who are in that situation who want to give something. They want to develop people. They want to see people excel, but they don't know and they don't have the within them to actually give. And it's so heartbreaking because you know as well as I do, when you go into these stores, you see these retail leaders giving their hearts out. But if they don't have it to give, they can't give it to anybody. Guess what? Retention goes through the roof again. Until I was able to identify that I needed to make a change within my leadership and get coaching, get mentoring, then I was able to actually increase my capacity. So now I was able to give people more of what they needed.
Such an important lesson, leadership lesson. And I would say that's true in frontline leadership, but I think that's just true in life overall. You and I have friends and colleagues and people who work in nothing to do with retail, and you listen to their stories and they're actually not that different. And so as much as you and I have spent our life about people in retail and businesses, and I think leadership lessons do go far and wide that are necessary.
100%. Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I'm saying that you and I were speaking like the other day, we were talking about like the different opportunities. Like I'm going to just dote on you for a second. I love seeing everything that you're doing, not just with this podcast, but then in the Ron Thurston world, right? I love to see the growth from when we just started to become friends to where you are now. Retail has availed you and myself so many different opportunities. I think leaders within other industries would not be able to adapt into, not be able to, transition into. I wholeheartedly. This is why I'm so passionate about retail leadership, is because it just equips you for life, as you were talking about, but also from a professional growth standpoint. And you're going to find yourself being able to move into different rooms, have different conversations that you didn't think you were able to have. But if you really buckle down and focus in on your retail leadership development, man, you can develop a team, but you can also develop yourself to new heights.
Thank you. Absolutely agree. And I felt like the best education was one of running stores. Best education about life and people and leadership is about running stores. You're learning it as you go. There's a couple last questions here, Steve. So thinking about frontline leaders that are listening, what's one thing that they could do today to have a conversation with their team, work on themselves, ask for something, give some people some quick advice, some quick wins for the holiday season?
Yeah, this was a new one that I discovered, and I've been telling people to do a lot of this, and they've been coming back with some really different results. When you sit down, you just have a moment in time, is to sit down and record yourself like 2 minutes, sort of what my fiance Cher calls like a ramble room, where you can sit down and you just talk for 2 minutes, and the prompt that you use, if I had to be honest with myself, the one thing that's holding me back is you start with that prompt, because I believe any development, of course, any growth, it starts with yourself first. So you have to understand what's holding you back. And what the results have been is that when individuals just sit there and they record themselves and they listen back, they start to realize, man, I have more depth about me than I thought I did. I have this thing that's been holding me back from opportunities, promotions, even helping my colleagues because of this one thing. A lot of times we don't think about it because we're just in our day-to-day rhythms. But if you were to sit down and just prompt yourself, what tends to happen is that you go for longer than 2 minutes. People have gone for 5-7 minutes just recording themselves. And then if they wanted to do it, the next step would be something like taking it to ChatGPT, and then they can actually dissect it for you as well. So bringing in sort of that AI world into helping you grow and develop.
Look at trends in your prompts, things like that. You could see that. Such a valuable self-reflective question. It's not this is what's being done to me, but what's holding me back.
100%
mentality. And you're right. That's how you make change happen. It's how you do great work. It's how you write books. It's how you start shows. It's how you build a business. You have to discover what's holding you back first and dig deep there. And I could speak for myself, surprise often what can happen.
Oh, 100%, 100%. If I can tell also leaders who are thinking about doing a podcast, or thinking about doing an article, or thinking about doing a post, they want to express their thought leadership or idea, I wholeheartedly say do it. And I will also give you this other piece of it. No one can. And what I mean by that, no one is really looking at your stuff like that. Or they, for them to be like, oh my gosh, this is so bad. No one's really no one can do it. Do the thing, because if you don't, you are going to have so many nights up, that you wish you would have done something. So just go ahead and do it.
No one's coming to help you. So you've got to do it yourself.
Do it yourself, man.
Last question, just thinking 2026, the campus, all the programs you've built, the community that you've built. How can people find you? What's happening in 2026? New survey. Give us the lowdown on Steve Worthy.
Yeah, new survey is already up and at 'em. So I've been trying, once again, I try not to look at some of the results until we hit a certain threshold where we're trying to double our number from last year. So we're looking at around 1,200 people. Hopefully this year, maybe we'll get more. We'll see what happens. So we're excited about that. We're also going to be, launching in January, finally our master classes. And this part of the campus is extremely, personal, but it's also something that, we've been trying to do for a while. And is that we have 12, 13, I think, different instructors, inside of the campus, but they're all like valued like retail leaders within their own space, and they all give something different. Whether it's Chris Egway, Ian Scott. We even got Mr. Jack Stratton going to be doing something in there, and what we've asked them for is an idea that they're really passionate about, that maybe so we're forward looking, the industry may not even be thinking about right now. And I felt it was important for us to think like that, not to think in the context of like what's already been said. Like, no, you've been doing this thing, your role for 15, 20, 25 years. You have some value to add. So I'm excited about that process. So we're going to be rolling that out in January. And then, of course, just our retail leadership is just going to be continuing to grow. You can go to worthyretail.com, or you can connect with me over on LinkedIn, man. You can see everything there.
I love it. And it's available at all levels, correct? In multi-store leadership, growth development, but at all levels, correct?
At all levels.
All are welcome.
The conversations that we have, I've had a couple of like store managers and DMs that are in there. They get excited because they're learning, senior vice president concepts and ideas. Like, we don't hold back. Like, we're not tap dancing around, right? We want to give you some meat. We want to give you some things that are like, they're going to stretch you. And I think if you just continue to get what you've always gotten, you're going to do what you always do. So we don't treat the campus or our conversations like that. We treat you at a very high level from a conversation and idea perspective.
Well, Steve, I admire greatly your work. You add such incredible value to the entire retail industry, and I really cherish our friendship, and I really thank you for being here. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you, Ron, man. I love everything about you, man. What you do, your ideas, and every time we get a chance to talk to each other in person, is just always like one of the best days ever, man. So I appreciate you guys for having me on.
More in person in 2026. That's our goal. We didn't do enough of that this year.
Agree.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Steve. Steve's findings make one thing unmistakably clear. Frontline and field leaders aren't asking for perfection. They're asking for clarity, connection, and a voice in how decisions get made. So for everyone listening, here's your challenge for the week. Start the conversation you've been waiting for someone else to begin. Ask your manager, your mentor, or your team, what's one thing I can do to make communication easier, clearer, and more connected? Because leadership isn't about knowing everything. It's about creating a culture where it's safe to find the answers together. Thanks for tuning in, and a special thanks to Ubik, the presenter of Frontline Fridays. Ubik is the AI-powered platform that helps retail and hospitality leaders connect, train, and empower their teams. Ready to make your frontline your competitive advantage? Visit ubik.com. That's YOOBIC.com to learn more. Until next time, keep leading boldly and keep turning insight into action.